Do you know that this song honors South African singer Miriam Makeba? It was released by French singer Jane in 2015 and has now gone viral on social media, topping the charts as well. Miriam Makeba, also an activist, is known for her exceptional musical talent and influential role as a prominent figure in the Pan-African movement. She used her voice and platform to advocate for social justice and raise awareness about the struggles faced by Black Africans. Makeba's powerful voice and global success as a singer made her an international icon and a symbol of resilience and cultural pride. Nelson Mandela even convinced her to return to South Africa, where she worked on charitable causes until her death in 2008.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz, the Sunday Sit Down. Michelle, I don't know what goes on over the weekend, but first and foremost, if you're on Threads, then I'm pretty sure you've seen this conversation come up a lot, where people are comparing Threads to Myspace and the genuine good community that was on Myspace. Why Facebook immediately became a hellscape, I don't know. But for those wondering, whatever happened to Myspace? Here you go.
Every time a new social media thing comes out, people always say how much they miss MySpace. And nobody really knows why MySpace went away. Well, I'm going to tell you. Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News, yes, that Rupert Murdoch bought MySpace in 2005 for $580 million. And he bought it with the explicit purpose of trying to market right-wing ideals to young people. Those were his words. So he had tried to do that, but back in 2005, there wasn't an appetite for politics the way there is now. Certainly not with young people on the internet. And so he just kind of held on to it, and it slowly died. Facebook was starting up around that time. And he was really trying to keep Facebook at bay, but he just couldn't swing it. And he even tried to put MySpace in a package with Yahoo for investors and valued that merger at $65 million. A couple people looked at it, nobody bought, and he ended up selling MySpace in like 2010 for $35 million. It was a huge loss. So that's what happened to MySpace. And the whole thing reminds me of that TikTok sound that's like, if I had a nickel for every time, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice, right? Because, of course, we're seeing that almost exact same thing happen with Twitter. I do miss MySpace. Maybe TikTok should give us a top 8.
And I think MySpace, now thinking about it, was so chill because everything, it's like we kind of took a step back as far as technology and customization on personal pages and social media. The more technologically advanced we got in other things, because MySpace was actually like your own mini personal website. It was very customized, your backgrounds, your music, and your top 8. So people really got a chance to get to know you before getting to know you. And I think being able to have an outlet to express oneself creatively really cut down on the desire to just walk around and be hateful towards people. I don't know, just a theory. But now I know everybody has been very, very concerned about the quintessential Magadonian judge, Judge Cannon, and her attachment to this Trump case. But just a reminder, Florida is not the only place that crimes regarding this particular case took place. So let's take a quick looky-loo.
Just when it seemed that maybe that Judge Eileen Cannon appointed by Trump might be his saving grace in the federal classified documents case, we have now learned that Special Prosecutor Jack Smith might be preparing to hit Trump with 45 more charges in that classified documents case, including potentially putting those charges forward in a different venue, like, for example, New Jersey, where Trump's Bedminster Resort is located, which also appears to be the scene of some of these alleged crimes, in order to get around the possibility that Trump-friendly Judge Eileen Cannon might be able to run interference from Trump.
She can't do nothing from outside the club. Nothing. She can't do nothing from outside the club. She can try. But see those leaked tapes, which I still believe came from the Trump side of things. They were in New Jersey at the time. So even if she tries to finagle him out of as many charges as possible, which is becoming harder and harder by the day, because it came out recently that he wrote notes, and who thought he could read or write on a lot of the documents. So I never saw him. I didn't do this. I wasn't. And the attorney that was on his team that was on the fraud case that was there, she just got moved to the campaign side of things. Not very bright. Now, once again, we know that SCOTUS has been screwing up a lot of things. But have you really thought about how SCOTUS is about to incredibly screw the economy? You didn't think about that part? You didn't think of it? Let's take a look and let's discuss.
The Supreme Court may have just fucked up the economy. So last week, the conservative majority ruled 6-3 to strike down Biden's plan to forgive up to $20,000 in federal student loans. So student loan payments, which have been paused for several years since the pandemic started, will now resume in October. Though also, Biden is now looking at other ways to get forgiveness or relief to those borrowers. But right now, unless something changes, payments are going to resume soon, and that's going to take a toll on millions and millions of Americans who have not had to pay for the last several years. And very importantly, this is coming as many households are already dealing with high inflation and interest rates, as well as record credit card debt. With experts explaining, this is a major hit to most people's budget. And the fact that it's been paused for so long means that people have mentally taken that out of their budgets. And so as a result, the impact this is going to have on people's budgets are also going to ripple into other parts of the economy, and particularly consumer spending. Because until now, for the most part, consumer spending has remained solid despite other economic uncertainties over the last year or so. But a lot of that money is going to have to be redirected to the billions of dollars in monthly loan payments. In fact, the investment bank Jefferies is predicting that student debt payments will resume at $18 billion a month, which is 3% of the $686 billion that was spent on retail and food services in May per Census Bureau estimates. But experts forecasting department stores and specialty retailers are going to be hit the hardest, as well as all kinds of discretionary spending like travel or streaming services.
See, this is why you can't trust the rich to give you financial advice. See, it's the rich and the wealthy that had no problem with their PPP loans that most of them did not need. Had no problem with those being forgiven, that they don't have to pay it back. See, they love not paying bills. Have you not learned anything from Trump and Elon? We're not even going to get into the rest of them. But see, they're trying to convince you that, you'll feel better about yourself if you pay off your own debt. But when they tell their stories, it's their parents that paid off their debt. They're currently paying off their children's debt. But they want inflation to decrease. They want the cost of everything to decrease. They want the economy to be stimulated. They don't want to go into another recession. They don't want to head into another Great Depression. So where are you supposed to get this money from? And before you say, well, people could work 2 or 3 jobs. Okay. If they're working 2 or 3 jobs, it's generally just to pay for for amenities, just to live. There's no discretionary budget. There's no going to the movies. There's no going to the store. There's no going to that boutique. There's no going to a concert and paying street vendors and the vendors inside the arena. There's no buying merchandise. There's no going and buying your favorite book. There's no streaming services in your budget. There's none of that. And let's say you do work 2 or 3 jobs and you're able to save a little. When are you going to have time to spend it? See, I know they say that there's 24 hours in a day. There are 12 hours in a day and 12 hours in a night. See, they tell you it's 24 hours in a day so that you'll push yourself and push yourself and push yourself and go without sleep and all those other things that are not good for your health. Mentally, physically, emotionally, nothing. So in those 12 hours, when you're told that you need 8 to 10 hours of rest, of sleep, not just rest, of sleep alone. When you gonna have time to go out and spend the money? So yeah, taking away student loan forgiveness is going to make the economy worse, not better. Because instead of spending money within the economy to stimulate it, you're going to be sending it to companies that were just created in most of our lifetimes to pay exorbitant amount of fees and interest rates before you even get to the principle of the matter. But I guess if that's what y'all like. But y'all remember the 303 creative case and that it was based on a scenario that was made up? Well, that doesn't the only case that SCOTUS has made a decision, come to a decision on with a made up scenario. Take a look.
Wait a minute, the Supreme Court actually struck down Biden's student debt cancellation plan? Yep. Thankfully, we were able to stop this radical plan from hurting our states. You would have been hurt by this. Oh yeah, that was like one of our main arguments. Me and my friends here banded together to basically say that this federal relief plan would hurt Mohila, a massive federal student loan servicer based out of my state. So we sued on their behalf. Actually, we don't want to be a part of this lawsuit at all. Wait, what? Yeah, obviously. Otherwise, we would have just filed a lawsuit ourselves. Plus, all our emails leaked showing how confused our employees were to be a part of the lawsuit at all. Some of them literally asking, are we the bad guys? Well, it doesn't matter. You're in Missouri, so if you get hurt, we get hurt. Yeah, but you don't? We're a corporation, completely financially independent from the state of Missouri. In fact, we could have reportedly gained revenue from this relief plan. Well, there were other states besides Missouri. Yeah, but for some reason, you used us as like your main example. In your oral argument, you reportedly said our name 142 times. We were a huge part of this final decision, despite never even showing up to court. Oh, wait a minute, this whole thing sounds super shady. It's almost like you guys didn't actually have any personal stake in this relief plan. You just disagreed with it. That's crazy talk. Who would say that? Literally Supreme Court Justice Kagan in her dissent letter. Yeah, well, shut up.
Notice how they keep getting spokespeople for corporations that are supposed to be so worried about losing money because of these scenario cases that are making it all the way to SCOTUS. And there's a certain handful of illegitimate associate justices that just keep riding right with it. Now, there's no true oversight for SCOTUS. There have been calls recently for there to be proper oversight and how that will be maintained and managed. But SCOTUS is so accustomed to nobody really paying attention to what they decide on and what goes across their desks, except for that once in a lifetime case that, oh, it finally makes the news. See, the one thing about having a boisterous showman faux president, a FOTUS, if you will, is that now people who never paid attention to anything are now paying attention. The problem is the vast majority are not educating themselves or at least freshening themselves up on what they should have learned in school. So even the arguments regarding this are still skewed and still dripping with misinformation and disinformation. Because if you think they just started taking payments from the likes of Harlan Crow, no. It's just that now people are wondering. Because once again, they're so worried about this, that, and the other. But Clarence Thomas is not broke. His wife is not broke. Why does somebody else have to pay for private school education for his nephew? Why does somebody else have to pay to remodel his mother's house and then allow her to live there rent-free? These associate justices are not broke. Why is there a need for all of these and this is what gets me, when wealthy people can impress rich people with vacations. The same thing, so to speak, loosely speaking, that people go on game shows in order to win. Because even the woman who embezzled from Amazon went out and bought herself a Lambo and a house. But they're risking their entire reputation and their entire careers because they're banking on you not paying attention off of things they could pay for themselves. Now let's look at politics done right. Let's talk about Governor Evers and the loophole.
Tony Evers is a tricky man. And I say that because he's a Democratic Wisconsin governor, and he just signed a 2-year budget that affects education for 4 centuries, and he didn't even need anyone's approval to do it. All right, so check this out. Initially, the proposal sent to his desk by the GOP increased the amount of revenue K-12 public schools can raise per student by $325 for the next 2 school years. But unlike any other state, Wisconsin lets its governors do a partial veto. Right? Basically, they can just veto parts of a bill down to specific words, numbers, and punctuation, and if the veto is then not overwritten, it passes. And so all Evers did is he took his pen, and where it said 2024-25, he simply crossed out the 20 and crossed out the hyphen, meaning that the new budget increased funding from now to the year 24-25. And as you might expect, Republicans are pissed, complaining that this will give schools the authority to raise property taxes if state aid doesn't cover the per pupil cost effectively forever. But also of note, it's not like this should have been unexpected. Both Democratic and GOP governors have been abusing the partial veto since 1930 and trying to clip its wings for just as long. And so as far as what's next, if Republicans want to block this, they're going to need a veto override, but that is all but certain to fail because it requires a 2/3 supermajority with Democrats. So of course, notably, a future legislature and governor could reverse the budget provisions if they garnered the support.
I highly doubt they do that. Now, are there some tyrannical Republicans, especially those that lean to the extreme side of conservatism? Yes. But what is the GOP currently learning in real time? Stop going against your constituents for sound bites, clicks, views, and interviews. Because they don't care anymore. They enjoy the echo chamber, but they don't like the echo chamber that's going to leave them broke. And what the constituency does, instead of saying, oh yeah, we need this, we can benefit from this, to make themselves feel superior, because that's all conservatism really truly is. If you want to be for real, and get to the crux of it, it's about superiority. It's about feeling morally superior. They'll just say, oh, well, you know, the blue need it, the libtards need it. We don't really need it. And then as soon as it becomes available, who is the first one in line to go get it? Who is the first one to gobble it up? You guessed it. You guessed it. Now, if you live in Ohio, if you know anyone who lives in Ohio, make sure you tell them at the 2020 mark, tell them to tune in and you pay attention. Here we go.
On the same day that high school English teacher Emily Ramser won an award for being an outstanding Texas educator, she stood in front of the Grapevine.
Hello, I am Ohio Democratic Minority Whip Jessica Miranda of House District 28, or as I like to call it, the Great 28. On August 8th, we are having a special election on Issue 1, an amendment that would strip away our right to decide what matters most to us. Issue 1 would end majority rule here in Ohio, replacing it with a system that would allow 40% of Ohio voters to decide the laws we live under. Republicans don't care that this bill will drive businesses from Ohio, discourage new innovation from coming to our state, and set Ohio's economic potential back decades. They don't care that it would make it less likely that bond initiatives that fund roads, parks, libraries, and bridges are passed. They don't care that they're making Ohio less economically competitive and less likely to attract investors. This bill is not for our workforce, it's not for our economy, and it is not for Ohio. We must uphold Ohio's Constitution. Ohioans have been trusted for more than 110 years to empower themselves with this democratic right. And only when we seek to protect our fundamental freedoms do Republicans decide that they won't represent Ohioans anymore. Issue 1 would destroy citizen-driven ballot initiatives as we know them, guaranteeing that only wealthy special interests could advance changes to our Constitution. Hardworking Ohioans in our factories, farms, and small businesses understand that extremist Republicans and special interest groups are trying to take away our rights, and we cannot allow it. Once the heart of America, Ohio has become America's heart of corruption. Citizens of Ohio, I urge you to protect Ohio, protect our Constitution, and protect our people by voting no on August 8th on this undemocratic, unfair, and unpopular issue.
Yeah, I have caught a bit of the advertisements regarding this. I've been sent different things pertaining to it, and the wording is very confusing. How it's being pushed out is very confusing. The GOP is putting a lot of money into propaganda campaigns in order to purposefully mislead you. And I've said this several times over the past couple of weeks. They are trying to strip you. Trans rights are on the line. Bodily autonomy is on the line. How to put things on ballots in the future is on the line. You're going to send yourself into a dystopia instead of a utopia. But now, on to the video that accidentally started previously. Politics and education. You should be teaching politics and education. You should not be using politics in order to sway and determine what other people's children should learn, especially under the guise of you saying you don't want it forced upon your children. So, explain to me the thinking that it is okay for you to force everything down the throats of other parents. Once again, every projection is a confession. Take a look.
On the same day that high school English teacher Emily Ramser won an award for being an outstanding Texas educator, she stood in front of the Grapevine Colleyville School District to tell them why she was among dozens of staff members resigning this year.
This community has continuously harassed me for the past few years, to the point that there were days I didn't even want to be alive anymore, much less be a teacher. So I'm going to listen to what I am hearing from this community, which is that y'all don't want people like me, people who might be gay, to teach here.
School districts across the country are facing a teacher shortage, fueled by burnout and low pay. But in Texas, many blame politics. Last year, Ramser's district saw a 40% jump in resignations and retirements after new conservative school board members pushed to remove hundreds of books and restrict lessons about race and LGBTQ identities.
I've taught these kids for years to write and to grow their voices, and I'm not going to let my actions say something different.
Ramser, who identifies as queer, says she was asked to change some of her lessons and to remove classroom artwork and rainbow stickers. Then, one afternoon last year, a parent told a local news site that Ramser encouraged her child to become transgender by lending her a book called The Prince and the Dressmaker.
All I did was give a kid a book.
What went through your mind?
I was terrified. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think.
The mother who accused Ramser declined to speak with NBC News, but the child and her father say the allegations were false, that the child already identified as transgender. The district cleared Ramser, but never made a statement for her to the public. The district declined to respond to NBC News about this specific case, but acknowledged it has more openings this year than last year, saying many other school districts, not only in Texas but across the nation, are also experiencing this declining retention rate of teachers and other employees.
It's almost like we're in a battle against the school board when the school board should be on our side.
Students described Emily Ramser's classroom as one of the most welcoming spaces at school.
I think Ms. Ramser was a few places anyone in general could feel accepted, no matter your race, religion, gender, sexuality.
Do you feel safe at school right now?
Not entirely, no.
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of aspects of who I am as a person that I cannot express because of the environment of the school that I go to.
NBC News obtained the district's 2023 teacher engagement survey. In it, almost 300 out of 1,500 staffers complained about the board. By the end of the school year, Emily Ramser's once vibrant classroom was barren.
Nobody can stop you from getting the education you deserve. I will give you book recommendations, because I can give you book recommendations now, hopefully, but you really can do anything.
Surrounded by her students, she was determined to teach one final lesson. Antonia Hilton, NBC News, Grapevine, Texas.
This whole war on woke is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say it's so important to learn history, true, actual, factual history, not this whitewash, revisionist, redacted history where there's always a white savior to make things right and the white people weren't the savages. No, because this war on woke is just McCarthyism 2.0. And during the Red Scare and McCarthyism, in order to get ahead, people would legitimately lie on their neighbors, on their enemies. Because how long? Because you heard about that teacher. The father and the student themselves said, no, my mom lied. My mom lied. Because one, there are too many people who feel like if their child isn't exactly like them, it's a failure, but it has to be somebody else's failure. No, your children are not supposed to be your mini-me's. They're not supposed to be your carbon copies. They are supposed to be their own person, and you are supposed to teach them and guide them to think for themselves. You are not Mary. That is not your little lamb that's just supposed to follow you around the farm. But how long? How long until your toxic mother-in-law, that boy mom of the man you're dating, that toxic sister-in-law or brother-in-law starts lying on you because they don't like the fact that your house looks better than theirs, that your car looks better than theirs, your relationship is happier and healthier than theirs. You get to take more vacations than they get to take. Their kids don't like them, but yours adore you. How long until the children that you should have went no contact with a long time ago? Because I know we talk about the children who have to go no contact with parents, but let's not act like there ain't some kids out there that we should have went no contact with a long, long time ago. Till they start lying and claiming that you too woke to be spoke to. Because the anti-woke GOP, didn't they kind of sort of just use that excuse to change who their HBIC was? Speaking of which, let's get some additional information on that replacement.
Do you remember this moment? This was the House floor fight captured by C-SPAN's cameras between former allies and current Congresswomen Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. It happened just about 2 weeks ago. Reporters claim that during that dispute, they heard Congresswoman Greene call her colleague, Ms. Boebert, a word that rhymes with kitsch. Marjorie Taylor Greene later called that reporting impressively correct. It turns out that incident was more than just a momentary feud. Today, Politico reports that the House Freedom Caucus, the far-right wing of the Republican conference, has voted to kick out Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Still, the woman who once suggested that...
Now, just to piggyback off of what I said last night, because I forgot to say this last night and it didn't dawn on me until earlier today. You notice how there's reporting. Oop, what did I get my hair? There's reporting on what MTG said. There's no reporting on what Boebert said. None. Now, ladies, femme-presenting individuals, if someone, especially a former friend, because they was bosom buddies, calls you a bitch, there are some things that are going to come out your mouth because they were so close. And even though they're no longer friends, pumpers, now come on, enough is enough. Sit down. Sorry, you all. But as much as they know about each other, and we know that Lauren Boebert is the quintessential mean girl. She's that mean girl that tries to play angelic so that she can be the victim, even if her cohort is another white woman. They're the most vicious. They're the ones that'll stand there. You call them a bitch. That, well, at least your husband and your mama. Why don't we know what Boebert said? Why don't we know what Boebert said? Like I said, we're anti-woke used a woke excuse to get rid of MTG. But, it's all good. They're going to have to get a little woke to get this red wave that they've been looking for all this time. Because even Mike Pence, with his inverted undercarriage self, has had to come out and tell the truth and be a little woke.
If it wasn't for your vote, we would not have Joe Biden in the White House.
It's an issue that continues to be misunderstood. I know by God's grace I did exactly what the Constitution of the United States required of me that day. I kept my oath. Don't take my word for it. Go read the Constitution. Not really. I say this with great affection and respect. The Constitution is very clear. My job was to oversee the session of Congress where objections could be heard, and I made sure that objections would be recognized. No vice president in American history ever asserted the authority that you have been convinced that I had. And I want to tell you, with all due respect, I said when I announced President Trump was wrong about my authority that day, and he's still wrong. I believe it with all my heart.
Trump and his former get-along gang have lied so much, so very much, that even people who are old enough to be properly taught how the election works, aka boomers, because that's why boomers go out to every single election. There could be a vote on what color the steps of the library from 1912 is going to be in 2027. They are going to be out there to vote on it, okay? Like not far from me, they had a celebration for a park that's going to open in honor of a civil rights activist. During this, they say, oh, we'll take input. Full of boomers. Why? Because they were taught how the process goes. But they are so willing to listen to Trump and take out half of their brain and go, boop. What he said has to be right. They know that it's not. They know that it's not. But what do boomers want more than anything? To own every other generation. Whether it's the silent generation before them, the Gen X and millennials that they gave birth to, or the Gen Z, Gen Alphas, etc., that are their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. This country, the traditions, the United States tradition, the culture of the United States is crabs in a bucket, creating competition because they believe that's going to make us the greatest. If you compete with the other person, it'll make you better. No, it doesn't. Stop focusing on somebody else's success and trying to chase what is the pathway of somebody else is nothing but a distraction from you, for you, and will keep you in the same place. It will make you think in your fantasies that you're moving up. But no, everything isn't meant for you. You can't handle everything. You ain't qualified for everything, and you're missing out on what you are qualified for, and you're missing out on the accomplishments for you because you were chasing the accomplishments of somebody else. Even if you are a twin, a triplet, a quadruplet, a sextuplet, you are still an individual. What is meant for you is meant for you. Your goals and your drive should not be determined by somebody else. If you so focused on, I got to be a better Jeff Bezos, I got to be a better Jeff Bezos. First of all you're doing is window shopping his life because you can't get into that store to really see what the quality of anything is, to even see if it's going to fit you. And window shopping don't get you anywhere. It's not going to improve your comfort living. It's not going to improve your wardrobe, nothing. So you are competing against your own brain, focusing on somebody else instead of focusing on making yourself better. Why do you think people are so quick to argue with each other and be so proud to work 100 hours a week? Because they're so focused on being better than somebody else and so focused on being in competition with everybody else. What's that getting you? Okay, you worked 100 hours last week. What do you have to show for it? At what point are you enjoying it? Because you are not a pharaoh. It's not going with you. Now, this next one is a little bit of a long one, but it's worth it. This is Sinatra and the Racist Song. Pay close attention.
A dark is born. He ain't no good no how without a song.
How did Frank Sinatra become the subject of an embarrassing gaffe committed by BBC4 broadcasters years after his death? We're going to file this one under Oops. I'm Dara Star Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. So there's this gorgeous standard that was written in 1929 by Vincent Yeomans, Billy Rose, and Edward Ellisque called Without a Song. It's not one of those ubiquitous standards, but it made the rounds during the golden age of standard singing, being covered by people like Perry Como,
Without a song,
Bing Crosby,
without a song, the day would never end.
and Tony Bennett.
Without a song.
It's from a 1929 play called Great Day that was a flop by any conceivable standard. It ran for 36 inauspicious performances, and 12 days after it opened, the stock market crashed and its fate was sealed. We'll call it a mercy killing. Yet, like so many lackluster films and plays of that era, a few musical gems did survive the fiasco. A beautiful ballad called More Than You Know, which was later used in the film's Funny Lady.
More than you'll ever know.
And the fabulous Baker Boys.
More than you know.
Another song that got a bit of a second wind was the title track from the play Great Day, a rousing gospel-esque number sung by both Sarah Vaughan
There's gonna be a great day.
and Judy Garland.
There's gonna be a great day.
The third well-known song to come from the play Great Day was the one Sinatra recorded, Without a Song. Without a Song is one of those big scenery-chewing power ballads that male vocalists of that time had a ball sinking their teeth into, with lots of open vowel sounds to show off their range and breath control. It was popular with belty singers like Mario Lanza, Sammy Davis Jr., and Robert Goulet.
I've got my troubles and woe, but sure as I know that Jordan will roll, I'll get along as long as a song is strong in my soul.
With lines about the Jordan rolling, trouble and woe, and field plowing, it was meant to occupy the same territory that Old Man River from Showboat had. But here's the thing, the play Great Day was a flop. The picture that MGM had tried to develop from it with Joan Crawford never got off the ground, so not many people had really heard Without a Song in its original context. That context being a plantation hand singing a big, rousing number, again performed in so-called Southern African American dialect, written by white men, of course. The play was about a Southern belle that was fighting to save her Louisiana plantation from her dastardly boss, flanked by her fair share of musically gifted Negroes, of course. Free of this context, some of the lyrics become questionable, to put it kindly.
A man is born. He ain't no good no how.
But the lyric that Frank Sinatra is singing here is not actually the original lyric written by Rose and Eliscu. And if you're thinking America's racist past might have something to do with that, you'd be right. Almost every singer that covered Without a Song after the play closed in 1929 changed the original lyric to reflect the changing times. Only 3 singers that we know of have ever sung the original lyric: Lawrence Tibbett,
A darky's born, but he's no good no how.
Bing Crosby,
Darky's born, but he's no good no how without a song.
and yeah, Frank Sinatra. The version he recorded with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra in 1941 with the original lyric sounded like this.
A darky's born, he ain't no good no how without a song.
He went on to record the song again just a few years later in a special recording for World War II troops with the updated lyric.
A man is born.
And he recorded it again on a 1961 album, this time in tribute to his former band leader Tommy Dorsey.
A man is born.
This long-forgotten lyric of this slightly obscure song hadn't been heard by many people. That is, until 2020, when a broadcaster on BBC4's PM program decided to play Sinatra's 1941 recording on the show, possibly not realizing that the racist lyric had been used in this version. When listeners heard it, there was understandable outrage, and they had to apologize for the gaffe a few days later on the air. Now, one offensive line in a song from a long-forgotten play from yesteryear may not seem like a particularly remarkable thing in and of itself, until you consider the greater context in which that play was written. It turns out that there were several well-known musicals at that time that employed the same kind of cringy language in an attempt to capture the essence of working-class black life, all written by white authors who could now easily be regarded as the pioneers of cultural appropriation. And some of that music may be a whole lot more familiar to you. Hear more about that in part 2. Be sure to follow the I'm All Over the Place podcast at the link in my bio, where we do deep dives on topics just like this. Recently, BBC4 had to make an apology for playing a super racist lyric in a standard sung by Frank Sinatra.
A darky's born, he ain't no good no how.
The song was from a play called Great Day, which was one of a handful of works by white writers and composers in the early 20th century that attempted to capture the experience and voice of working-class black folks. These works filter the lives of their beleaguered black subjects through the white gaze, replete with pseudo-slave talk, rousing gospel numbers, and struggle arias. But these works by white creators and authors didn't just spring forth from the earth. Black writers and composers had already begun telling their own stories in ways that were eye-opening for the progressive white artists that were paying attention at that time. And the groundbreaking works that people like George and Ira Gershwin, Jerome Kern, and Oscar Hammerstein created could well be considered some of the earliest examples of well-intentioned cultural appropriation in the U.S. I'm Dara Star Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. The 1920s represented a time of great hardship and unprecedented achievement for Black Americans. The new Negro was a term that came to be popularized during this time. It represented a determination by Black Americans to fight back against racial violence and to assert their academic, creative, and political voices to a degree that they never had before. The Harlem Renaissance brought with it a new focus on the rising Black intelligentsia that introduced the world to Black art and artists that were changing the way that Black people were perceived and portrayed in popular media. So in the time period that the play Great Day was made, there were several works being produced mostly by white men that attempted to accurately portray Southern black life in the United States. Dorothy and DeBose Hayward wrote a book called Porgy in 1925 that was later adapted into a play of the same name. DeBose eventually collaborated with George and Ira Gershwin to produce what is considered to be the first great American opera, Porgy and Bess, in 1935. It featured an all-black cast, and much of the dialogue was written phonetically in what Hayward and Ira Gershwin interpreted as the vernacular of African Americans in the Jim Crow South.
Oh, Dr. Jesus, how come you ain't lay your hands on this poor sister's head
Oh, my Father.
and cast the devil out of her down the steep place into the sea?
One of the most famous standards ever written, Summertime, was introduced in this show. Edna Ferber's 1926 novel called Showboat was adapted into a musical in 1927 by Oscar Hammerstein and Jerome Kern. This tale began in the Reconstruction period following the end of slavery. It tells the stories of both black and white characters in the South whose lives intersect on a riverboat floating down the Mississippi. We observe these characters experiencing love, loss, and hardship over a period of 30 years. The play's most famous song, Old Man River, was sung by a black dock worker named Joe, and again, it was written in what Hammerstein interpreted as Southern black dialect. The play was a massive hit and it spawned many remakes. So Vincent Yeoman's 1929 play Great Day was really meant to compete with Kern and Hammerstein's Showboat. The show flopped, but several of the songs continue to be sung to this day, including that Frank Sinatra number that BBC4 got in a bit of hot water for playing on the air. It was called Without a Song, and it was sung by a field hand in the original play Great Day. Clearly, the writers were attempting to repeat the success of Hammerstein and Kern's Old Man River. The songs from Great Day and the music from Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, as well as Kern and Hammerstein's Showboat, highlight a very interesting period in America's racial history, a period where white songwriters began to create art that attempted to capture something of the black experience in the U.S. that felt authentic to white audiences at the time, something beyond the mocking minstrel shows that had dominated public taste for the previous 50 years. The racism inherent in white men attempting to write music in the so-called slave vernacular was not lost on black audiences of that day. Many black people viewed these creative licenses as deeply insulting even then, but they did represent a step forward in their ambition and overall conceit. Of course, the timing of the shift was no coincidence. Black thought leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and black voices of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston had begun to give artistic voice to the black proletariat, and white artists and audiences were beginning to take notice. Against the backdrop of extreme violence being waged against the black population at that time, these plays were among the first signs that a new era was dawning. Though deeply flawed, they attempted to lend a seriousness to the black experience in the U.S., and they represented some of the first real efforts by white writers to acknowledge the humanity of black subjects through their art.
My next tour stop will be on Monday, the 11th of September in New York. Visit the link in my bio for details.
This is why we say, without black bodies and black voices, the United States wouldn't be so profitable. But it also goes to show you the level of appropriation and how it is so ingrained into white society. It's bad enough that white people, specifically white men, were trying to write our experiences, as authors continue to try to do and screenwriters continue to do to this day, by the way. But songs meant to be sung by black people. Did you see any of those releases being by a black person? They listen to the lyrics. They know the plot of the play that it came from. And they're like, yep, this is the right one for me. Do you now get that it's not just a song? It's not just food. It's not just a hairstyle. That's why even to this day, we try to correct you when something is created for black people and now for black people by black people, and you decide, you know what, it's for me too. No, it's not. No, it's not. For a race of people, because I cannot say white people are a community, because white people have no sense of community. Let's clear the air and let's be real with that. But for people who wanted so long to stand by this hierarchy of race, to stand at the pinnacle and segregate themselves from us, why are you always trying to kick in the door to our safe spaces for people who spew such vitriol towards Black people? Why are you always trying to be in the midst of what we have? If we are so subpar, why are you trying to do what is meant for us? And before you say, but we've come so far in racism, they don't do that anymore, Taz. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
Jason Nicholas, I've been listening to him on Fox. You people cannot live in a civilized society because you're fucking primates and you're uncivilized. You know, you people are disgusting. You don't belong here. To listen, press 0. To delete, press *D. To skip, press the pound sign. You know, you belong in Africa where all the jungle monkeys are. What are you, that stupid? You can't even fucking get out of the ghetto. You love it because you like to do your drugs. You like to live in filth. Let's face it, that's who you are. Put your fucking drugs down. Stop stealing from me. As a white person, 50 years of affirmative action. I couldn't get a job because of you fucking niggas. Voice message from the white people have given you everything with a silver spoon, you know, and you can't even get out of the fucking ghetto. All you do is kill each other. You should be kneeling for the security people who help the fucking athletes, who protect them. That's who you should be kneeling for. The policemen who sit there and protect these fucking piece of shit athletes. You're disgusting as a race. You really are. And if I were Black, I'd be so fucking humiliated and embarrassed. It's about time you hear.
Keep in mind, she said that to a college professor. A college professor told him he couldn't put down the drugs to do any better for himself. And all of a sudden, we are stealing jobs from them. Isn't it amazing that the jobs that they complain the most about are the jobs that either they don't want or have never been qualified for? But nobody tells her it's just a job. It's just a position. It's just skin color. Well, when we complain about this, what's the context behind it? It's just words. But see, they see all of us as being beneath them, even when we are above them. What, you feel sad for her? Gotta be. You gotta be feeling sad for her. Because she's losing all ounces of her shit. Because it's always the ones that barely got out of middle school, let alone high school, that have the most vitriol for our excellence. Don't ever feel sorry for somebody being jealous. Why? Why? In this situation, he's winning. Why are you feeling sorry for him? Why? Why? He's the college professor. She's losing her shit because of sheer jealousy. Because how much you want to bet she doesn't even have a family member that works there or that's enrolled in that college? How much you want to bet she saw something on the news, on TV, on social media, and got so in her feelings and so eaten up with jealousy that she had to lose her mind. Don't feel sorry for the person that's winning. See, that's the problem. We have been so conditioned. We have been so conditioned into believing that their discomfort means there's something wrong with us. Nah. Every time they're uncomfortable, there's something more and more right with us. Don't feel sad for him. He's winning. If you win a marathon and Billy Bob comes in sixth and throws a tantrum and cries on the sideline, are we supposed to feel sad for you for winning? It is comedy. That you already know. It's out of jealousy. They lose their shit. You would lose your shit too if generation after generation after generation after generation somebody told you that your skin and you merely existing made you the creme de la creme. And then you sit around and look around and you ain't got shit. You don't know shit. You ain't never gonna be shit. You would be mad and in your feelings and wouldn't know what to do if the people you have been indoctrinated into believing are the savages of the world are doing better than you. All they got to do is wake up and be them. Yeah, you lose it too. But don't feel sad for us for winning. Now, to close out the day, let's take a look at something that a lot of white people are being shocked by because they've been lied to, saying that they had indigenous roots, as if the $5 Indian roll didn't exist. People have been told that they have Hispanic or Latino roots, where really they're just the descendants of Nazis who fled to different Latino or Hispanic countries and then immigrated over to the United States. And folks are finding out just how much their ancestors loved to tittle with Black folks and how many of their relatives were white passing.
As Black as you. Can't wait to call my sisters and my brother and tell them this. Do you think that Shebe's big mystery was the extent of Black ancestry?
Yes. I think that's what she hid behind.
That's the thing that she was hiding the most. But she came to this country at a time of Jim Crow.
Yeah.
When the law punished you for being Black. And who wanted those limitations? So that could have been the demon that Shebe was fleeing.
10% African.
Carly, 10% is roughly equivalent to the amount of DNA you would inherit from a great-grandmother of full African ancestry. Slavery was an essential part of the Cuban economy. Scholars estimate that Cuba imported nearly 1 million Africans over the course of the slave trade. That's about 2.5 times the number that were shipped to the United States. And while we couldn't identify Carly's enslaved ancestor by name, the paper trail clearly suggested that she's descended from one. We have never...
Whether famous or not, within the past 15 years, whether through genealogy testing on a television show, genealogy testing from home, a lot of people have been brought to their court to find out that mothers, grandmothers, and great mothers, people that they have had direct contact with, were not white. And they don't know what to do with the hate that they grew up with. And before you go, well, sometimes they couldn't have grown up with hate if they had a black mother or a black father that was just passing. Baby, listen, you would be amazed at the things that white passing people, passe blanche individuals, put up with, knowingly married into, knowingly regurgitated in order to survive. And every time somebody got pregnant, the prayers that went up, the fingers that was crossed, and the hopes that the next child born was void of melanin. Because even right before the Reconstruction era, there were plantation owners. Because here's an open secret about white people. White people pay attention to skin tone, not phenotypes, not features. And how many of them were married to black women who were able to passe blanche? And then these men would flee the county, flee the country sometimes when that 12th baby would come around and it was obvious she was black. And instead of kicking her out or trying to kill her, because they done spent decades together at this time, he done professed his love all over the place. He was embarrassed. He had to leave even though he loved her. So yes, you could live in a house with somebody who's white passing and still be fervently ingrained with white supremacy and racism. Look how many biracial and multiracial children and adults are out there that want to identify as white, want to identify as anything else but non-white, and will spew to you the craziest things, or children you can look in their eyes and see that they're getting along just to get along. But as always, thank you for joining me here for the Sunday Sit Down. Make sure if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And as always, check out the links in the description of this video. And I'll leave you with a little Miss Kiki.
I haven't seen you since you gave birth to baby Leo.
I know.
I mean, you must be missing him right now.
I am. I'm like, skedaddle. I'm like, yes, thinking about my little boy. Oh my gosh, I love him too much. Man, my favorite parts, I think it's our morning. We do a little singing and song and talking. He's laughing, he's smiling, and he's a little sleepy, so I don't have to hear him cry. We doing this, we doing that. And I do a little rap to tap. I get it too. Mama is working still, and I got something coming for y'all too. Leo might be a little actor as well. I be putting everybody to work. Don't come around me for too long. If we get close enough, honey, you getting a job. I want my son to have everything, so I got to stay booked and busy.